Executive Suite with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi.
Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. Later on in the show, we're going to talk to Daniel Murphy about the new Hatch Entrepreneurial Center that just opened in Providence to help startups and small businesses get off the ground. But first, Twitter is making big headlines these days, even if all the words can still fit comfortably inside 140 characters, with one early investor valuing the social media juggernaut at $10 billion. Twitter's executives now planning to take the company public in the biggest tech IPO since Facebook. In February, Twitter co-founder Jack Dorsey was here in Providence for an event at RISD, the renowned school of design, and we sat down with him to talk about Twitter as well as his new company, Square. And Executive Suite, we thought with the pending public offering, it'd be good to bring you that conversation again. So here now, my one-on-one with Jack Dorsey. Jack, thanks for sitting down with me. Your talk at RISD today about Square is titled Designing Commerce to Feel Amazing. What will your message be to the students here?
Well, it's mainly one of the things that we love exploring at Square is the intersection between art and technology and architecture and engineering, and how that inspires trust, how it inspires people to kind of ignore the technology and really focus on what's meaningful. And what's meaningful in commerce is actually the conversation between the buyer and the seller. We've tried to minimize the burden of payments, the mechanics of payments, the fact that you have to dig out your credit card, or you have to dig out cash, or you have to fumble with the checkbook. All that should disappear in service of just facilitating this simple commerce transaction that happens every single day all around the world. So how can we use design and the process of design to help that along?
And you've said you're not a fan of the word disruption used in technology. You like a different word.
No, disruption is like an earthquake. It's moving things around. It's not necessarily moving things around with any sort of value or any sort of purpose or any sort of mission. So we prefer revolutions. Revolutions have purpose. They have values. They have a drive. They have a shared set of understanding, and they're actually trying to change something based on some friction point or based on some wrongdoing over here to actually get to something that people feel better about. So I think the tech industry at large uses disruption a little bit too much, but disruption to us is directionless. It doesn't really have anywhere to go.
And your own message, your own story is fascinating. You didn't always plan to create big companies. You actually looked at being a massage therapist for a while. What do you think the message is there for would-be entrepreneurs who are watching this?
Don't be a massage therapist. No,
but you have that to fall back on if any of this falls apart.
Yeah, I never really thought about building companies. I had ideas and I wanted to see them in the world, and it just happened to be the case that the most efficient means of bringing an idea around the world today is a corporate structure. So I learned everything I needed to learn about building a company, and that was it. But along the way, I did many other things. I did botanical illustration, I did fashion design, I did massage therapy because I was developing RSI. So all these things were in service of me being able to bring these ideas to the world. And that would be my advice: is you have to have a drive and a passion to do whatever it takes to push your idea out into the world and make it thrive.
And let's talk about Square specifically. Seeing it used more here in Rhode Island, the Food Truck Festival, the RISD alumni sale. We're sitting here at RISD. A bakery just opened and they have an iPad with Square attached to it. How does Square work exactly for a business that's decided, all right, we're going to use Square to process our payments?
Well, what we recognized really early on was how difficult it was to just accept credit cards. You have to get a merchant account. It's a 1 week to 4 week process. It's extremely costly. And the problem is that most people have moved to paying with plastic cards. So they're paying with a debit card or a prepaid card or a gift card or a credit card. They're not carrying cash around. They're not carrying their checkbooks. So if you don't accept credit cards, you actually lose sales. So that was the simple idea: is how do we turn on that other side? How do we make it as simple as going to the App Store, downloading an application, putting in your name, us sending you a free credit card reader that plugs into your iPhone or your Android mobile phone or your iPad, and then swiping your credit card and that money going into your bank account the very next day. Can it be that simple? And the answer is yes, it can. So that is Square today. You go to the App Store, you find Square Register, you download it, you put in your name, your address, and we'll send you a free credit card reader, and you can start swiping credit cards and debit cards, and the money goes into your bank account the very next morning. So it allows you to focus on what's truly important in your business instead of having to worry about getting a merchant account or all these fees that you have to pay that don't really make any sense.
And business might be listening and thinking, well, is it for a tech business only or certain kinds of business? But you're aimed at every kind of business at almost every size. At
everyone, and that's what I love about it, is it scales from an individual all the way up to the largest organization in the world. So on the other side, we have Starbucks using it, and they're using the exact same technology that someone who is having a garage sale on Craigslist is using it for. Just accepting credit cards. We have, babysitters, we have dog walkers, we have golf instructors, piano teachers, flight instructors, food trucks, cafes. So that whole range of commerce, anything that you can imagine doing, you can imagine buying and selling, you can use Square for.
Now, I want to ask you about Twitter as well, but one more thing on Square. I saw you wrote on your Tumblr about banning the word user. Very common word in the tech world. Why did you do that?
Well, user as a term has a very long history. So initially, it actually happened around MIT, and it was a term of it's actually a derogatory term for people who were not skilled in programming. So these are just users of resources instead of creators or builders or people who were consuming these resources. So over time, it's kind of become this abstraction where a user is not necessarily a person. It's just this abstract concept. So we wanted to change from using that term in the company because we want a really concrete example of who we're building things for. And we chose the word customer, and when we focus on one side of the counter, buyer or seller, you immediately get in your head a sense of who that person is and what they might like, what they might enjoy, what they might not like, and you know how to deliver a good product to them. The word customer also indicates that there is an exchange of value, right, and that they're paying for a service. And they may not be paying a fee for the service, but they're certainly paying in time and attention. So if you use a word like customer, you immediately sort of respect that, and it raises the bar on the level of service that you're providing.
On Twitter, I use it constantly. I know my colleagues who are here talking to you today use it as well. But I also talk to a lot of people who say, I don't know if Twitter's for me. I don't have anything to tweet. What do you say when you hear things like that from people?
Well, you never know. It's really up to the interpretation, right? So I think first and foremost, it's a great way to figure out what's happening in the world. So I use it as my news. I figure out everything that's happening in the world, no matter where it is, from Twitter. Twitter is the first thing I check when I get up in the morning. It's kind of like the weather report. Is it going to be sunny? Do I need an umbrella? What's actually happening today in the world? And Twitter answers that question. When you're actually tweeting, and you don't have to tweet to actually get use out of it, you can simply bring up the application and see what's happening in the world and see the news and whatnot. Follow your favorite sports stars or celebrities or people you admire. But if you do tweet, someone will find meaning in it. And early on in the company's history, we got a lot of flack for Twitter being about what you had for breakfast. People would tweet about, well, I had bacon and eggs for breakfast, and why should anyone use that? Why is that meaningful? Why are we spending time on this? And I'm actually someone that tweets about what they have for breakfast, and to most of the world, 99.9999% of the world, it's useless, and maybe so useless it's offensive to people, but my mom loves it. She thinks it's amazing. She knows I'm eating. She knows I'm alive. She knows I'm eating well. So it's all up to the interpretation. So give it a chance. Someone will find value in what you have to say.
Rhode Island, you're here today in Rhode Island. We have the highest unemployment rate in the United States, and there's a lot of debate going on in the state about what we can do to make it a more attractive place for startups, for entrepreneurs. If state leaders asked you for your advice to create that kind of environment, anything come to mind to you?
Well, I think the biggest thing is stating that you want that, stating that you want small businesses, that you want more of them, and not just stating it, but showing it, and showing it with with mentorship programs, showing it with subsidies of equipment, of space. It's one of the things we focus a lot on at Square, is because one of the big barriers to actually starting a business is getting paid. So taking that and making that easy and making that something that people can just check off the list immediately enables them to actually focus on what they want to do. We've seen a lot of folks within cities, within downtowns, take to Square and start accepting credit cards and actually build their business because they have really compelling data on what's working and what's not working. So the city shining and the government shining a spotlight on those easy paths of starting something, I think goes a far, far way. And then also giving other people the confidence to join and to work at a small business, that these things will last, that they are important to the economy, and they're really meaningful. So, it's just taking on that attitude and really showing and not telling more than anything else.
And we're just about out of time. One last question for you. I've never had a billionaire on Executive Suite before. How much has your life changed from being so fortunate?
I only get this, only by getting this question every now and then. It's not really what drives me at all. As I said, I never started with the intention of building a company or becoming rich. I wanted to see the idea for Twitter exist in the world, because I love cities. I love knowing what's happening in the world instantly. I just think that's extremely compelling, and that's the most meaningful thing. So everything else kind of just fades away. And the same is true for Square. My mother ran a coffee store. My father has been an entrepreneur since he was a kid. He started a pizza restaurant when he was 19, and they saw all the problems of just getting started, and that's always what's driven me, is just to solve problems and actually build things so I can use them in the world, because I think they're better.
Jack, thanks very much for the time.
Thank you.
My interview with Twitter co-founder Jack Dorsey from earlier this year. Coming up, a new hub for startups opens its doors this week in Providence. We talk with Daniel Murphy of the Hatch Entrepreneurial Center. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi, and I'm pleased to be joined now by Daniel Murphy. He's here. I've got two titles for him today. He's Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Ocean Capital, and today in particular he's here as the co-founder and principal of the Hatch Entrepreneurial Center, which is brand new in Providence. Dan, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start off, before we talk about Hatch, we're going to talk a lot about that, but give people a sense of your background and your family's home loan investment bank. It might ring a bell to people. They have a big sign off 95 in Warwick that we all zip by on our way up and down the state, and that's been part of your family for 40 years. What is the Home Loan Investment Bank?
My dad is the founder, and he's currently the chairman of the board of directors. And we started by providing home equity loans. Since that time, even in the last 5 years, we've added auto finance. We have Title I home improvement loans. We also, as far as you mentioning Ocean Capital, I provide small business financing. So I do SBA and USDA loans for small business owners.
Obviously, home loans in particular, not an easy business in some quarters in recent years. And I know, like all banks, your company has had its challenges. But how would you describe the situation right now for the bank? How are you feeling? All bankers are, I know some of them breathing a sigh of relief at this point.
Yeah, it's been, these last couple months have been great. Housing starts, which means new construction. That means jobs are being created, which is fantastic. We're also seeing a lot more home purchases. In the last week or so, with interest rates rising slightly, we've seen applications for refinancing have started to slow down. People are waiting for that night, the right opportunity to really take advantage of a tangible benefit in refinancing their primary home mortgage. So we're going to watch and see how things are happening, but really the home improvement, we're number 2 in the nation as far as home improvement Title I loans.
We should be clear to people, you're not just loaning in Rhode Island by any means.
Oh, absolutely. No, we're nationwide. So we are a smaller bank, but yes, we have, we've been doing nationwide lending for almost 40 years.
For a long time now.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Ocean Capital, and you kind of alluded to it, but just give us a little more sense. Ocean Capital, are you lending to small businesses, bigger businesses? How big is the panoply, and what do you do there?
Yeah, the maximum loan size with SBA is $5 million. So we're helping some local borrowers with some microloans, $25,000, $50,000. But our typical or average loan size is around $250,000. So we're doing smaller loans in the New England region, but we've been doing loans, again, nationwide for over 20 years, since 1980. So we've been in this space for quite some time. when 1980 was when the prime interest rate was close to about 20%.
Yeah, my dad always tells me about getting a mortgage back then.
I was just a toddler at the time, but I do know my history, and I know where we've been, and I know where we're going, and the signs that I see for recovery are imminent. They're right in front of us, and it's really good to see the progress that's being made, which inspired me to do the Hatch Entrepreneurial Center.
And a perfect segue there. You could do TV yourself. You're the principal and co-founder of the Hatch Entrepreneurial Center. You had a grand opening this week. I think we have some photos we can show of how things looked over there. Where is the Hatch Entrepreneurial Center, first of all, and what is it? 244
Way Bossett Street, right in the downtown area in Providence. And our branch is on the first level. So we've had this space. This space has been utilized in bits and pieces by people like the Army National Guard, for example. They had a recruiting office there, but we had a lot of additional vacant space. And over time, we had people who wanted to buy the building. They wanted to maybe have an office there. They wanted to potentially even acquire the space and convert it to residential housing.
Sure.
But we were not interested in selling it. We knew that there was going to be a greater purpose for this space somewhere down the line. Neil Steinberg and the Rhode Foundation happened to have an event last September 7th and 8th of 2012. I was not able to attend. My father and my brother Brian, our CEO of Home Loan Investment Bank, they did attend, and they told me about what they witnessed, and it moved them. And I reminded them of what my vision was for that space years before. So I dusted off my business plan, updated it, and told them I'd like to renovate that space. I'd like to give it back to the Providence entrepreneurial community, but really the state as a whole. We have resources here. There are things like Beta Spring and Founders League, which are very successful in helping startups right now. We're creating another opportunity for the other entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs that may not be in high tech or high growth industries. We're helping people currently who are consultants, members of collaborative groups, and our space is ideal for them because co-working and collaboration is what this space is all about. We open up the space so that entrepreneurs can come into the area, they can have their morning cup of coffee, so we're that alternative to, say, Starbucks. We want them to come in the space, get energized, check their emails, use the Wi-Fi, and then go into a workspace where they're going to be working amongst peers who have a like-minded background or interests. But there's also times where the person sitting next to you may have a strength that which happens to be your weakness. And so that type of collaboration we're hoping is not only going to create jobs a little bit more quickly by virtue of the companies being created as a result of this networking and collaboration.
Almost reminds me of like the college library where everyone's working on something different at the computers and everything
That's
together.
essentially it, because I attended Brown University and graduated over a dozen years ago.
And you got the tie out.
I do. I'm wearing this as support because these ideas, they started at Brown University. I witnessed every single May the brain drain, the human capital leaving our state. 11 colleges and universities are providing this capital, human capital, and they're not finding the opportunities here in Rhode Island. I want to change that. I want to be the impetus or the catalyst for change here in Rhode Island. I challenge others to do what I just did. It just got started. I have 2 applications that rolled in the last 24 hours, and we already have 2 groups that are in that space right now. So it's already being validated by virtue of the business community and the support we received yesterday at the grand opening. But we're just getting started. This is really just the beginning.
And let's talk about the space particularly. I want to give people a real concrete sense of what it is. So first of all, who's the target? How much does it cost? You mentioned applications. How is someone going to end up? I couldn't just walk right in off the street and say, I think I'll set up a business in the corner over there.
You could walk in off the street.
Try. Okay.
Yeah, and you could rent a conference room for an hour or for the day if you wanted to have a group meeting where there's a number of, say, B&I groups and local gatherings. Instead of going to a hotel or a restaurant where 15 of the 20 people are drinking water, well, the restaurant doesn't want that. Right. We welcome you with open arms. We want you to come into our space. We want you to, again, collaborate and use this space. It's for the business community.
And so for others, though, it's going to be a membership model. Explain how that will work.
Similar to, say, like a gym membership. If you want to work in the space, but you don't need it for, say, 9 to 5, you want to pop in, use the resources, grab a cup of coffee, use the meeting room, and then go right back out on the road, you're welcome to. When you pay, let's say it's $100 for that type of membership, similar to a gym, we want you to utilize the resources there. So instead of working out your muscles, you're working out your mind, and we want you to continue to do that.
And when you say resources, let's say, walk me through what's the floor look like? If you walk in, what are you going to see in that space that people can use?
On the second floor, we have the law offices of Kevin B. Murphy. My brother, he started the law firm on July 1st. Since that time, he's already expanded and he's added employees. This is the typical success story that we want to see. We want to see a viable small business be created, but also create opportunity for others. And he's already done that. We also have another tenant by the name of Amber Price, and she has a product called Clean Temp, which is a thermometer that fits inside a sheath that sterilizes it for commercial kitchens. So a person that's working, whether it be for an airlines or let's say at Johnson & Wales University, the instructor will show them, hey, in order to test the temperature of this piece of filet mignon, In order to go into another piece of meat for health and food safety reasons, you do need to sterilize that thermometer. And then you can go into a piece of, say, tuna or chicken, or et cetera, et cetera. So we've been actually helping her, mentoring her, but more importantly, providing her the space and the resources to connect her. Maybe it's to seed capital so that she can get some investors to help further her growth. But more importantly, some of the people who were congregating yesterday at the grand opening, I introduced Amber to a young woman, Liz Periotti, who is the owner of Inventing Life, and she's already working with her to help her further her growth.
So it's not just about the sort of economies of scale, it's also about, you think there's a real value to be gained by these people being next to each other and talking to each other.
Absolutely. And the reason why we wanted to create this space is because the universities, they have their private space, but what happens after I graduate? What if I had that idea while I was an undergraduate, I leave, where am I going now? I don't want you to go back into the coffee shop or your parents' basement or back into your apartment and sit in that, you're in your little silo, you're on an island by yourself, headphones on, and you're just got blinders on. I want you to take the blinders off. I want you to just see and look around and realize that there's going to be some opportunities for you to network, introduce yourself, collaborate, and again, create.
Now, you're a banker. One of the questions you'd ask anyone coming to you for a loan would be, well, what's the demand for your product? How are you going to get revenue? So
Absolutely.
I ask you that on this. What gives you a confidence that anyone's going to want to use this?
Right now, the phone calls that I've been receiving over the last several years, now we've owned this space for a long time. I've received calls from RISD students looking to use this space for a gallery. I've spoken to attorneys, debt collectors, someone who wanted to rent, say, 500 square feet. And I said, well, that's great, but we're not ready for you quite yet. After the Make It Happen, we decided, you know what, this is viable. What we're going to do is we are going to renovate the space. We're going to basically replace the roof, replace the windows, replace the carpets, the floors, everything, you name it. Went around the room and put idea paint, so rather than using whiteboards, people can write directly on the walls, share, and again, collaborate. So the idea was that there is demand out there. When Beta Spring and Founders League, when they had 400 applicants for 12 spaces, the other 388, I didn't want them to go back to the coffee shops. I wanted to provide them hope, give them an opportunity to also be able to succeed in a similar like space. So we're creating co-opetition. We're supporting their initiative. We just happen to be the new kid on the block.
And you mentioned, you talked about this a little when we were talking about the bank, but I always say bankers a good banker anyway, has sort of an ear to the ground on the state of the economy, because are people calling you for loans? Do you see volume up or down? And I'm curious, what are you hearing? What are you seeing right now in your day job? Are you seeing loan volume up? Is there more confidence among people coming in, or is it not too different from last year? How's it feeling?
It's been, I can tell you, it's been sort of undulating actually by the quarters. The first quarter demand was down. Second quarter demand increased significantly. And in the third quarter, what we saw was increased demand for working capital. We saw manufacturers who needed to fulfill some jobs that they had already taken in a quote and provided a quote, but oh my gosh, we don't have the funds necessary to make that happen. So we've seen a lot of short-term needs. Working capital, as far as an SBA loan, is paid back in 7 years. So what we also try to do is provide them a variety of options so they can understand, if I pursue this transaction, this could extend the term, provide low interest rate financing, but for a longer term, which makes it more affordable, a greater tangible benefit. So we're seeing people acquiring and expanding space. Real estate acquisition is obviously something that we see as a very positive sign for the economy. If someone is expanding from, say, a 2,500 square foot leased space and now is morphing and growing into, say, a 5,000 square foot space, we want to help them not only acquire it, but also build it out and renovate it so they can get into that space and start operating, generating profit.
So it sounds like you see room for optimism, but you can't totally say that there's a definite trend of up. It's with the changes.
Yes, it's unfortunate, but it's not this steady increase. It has been, like I said before, a little bit of undulation, but it's normal within the economy, especially in an economy like ours that tends to lag behind the national economy.
So what advice are you giving when people say they want to come in here and they say, well, how do I get a loan? How do I convince someone to give me the money to start up my company? I mean, what are you telling these folks when they come to you?
A lot of times I look at their business plan. I want to see, are they ready for financing? If they're not ready or prepared, the word prepared is so important. Businesses do not prepare to fail. They just fail to prepare. So we want to help them prepare, plan ahead, forecast. Let me see your financial projections. Let me see what you have put on paper. Once someone puts something on paper, they tend to believe it. So we want them to not only believe what they've put on paper, but I want them to explain to me, how are you going to achieve this? If I see a flawed financial plan, a business plan that has financial projections that have the revenue that is the same in month 1 as month 12, I'm going to give them back to them and say, do you see what I see? Because if your revenue is not growing from month 1 to month 12, we have a problem here. Let me explain to you why I think we can fix this. Do you mind if I work with yourself and whoever helped you prepare these financial protections? I want to understand where they came from. I also want to really confirm that they have the experience in the industry. I've had people come to me and say, I want to start a daycare. Fantastic. Are you licensed? Have you been working in the field for a long period of time? No. Okay, well, what makes you think it's going to be so easy? It's not easy to start a business and be successful. So you need to really work on something that is your true passion, because you're going to invest more time and energy into something you're passionate about.
Sound a bit like a business therapist as well as a banker,
exactly.
Right? All right, Dan, that's all the time we have this week. I want to thank Daniel Murphy for joining me. You can find out more online about the Hatch Entrepreneurial Center there on Weybosset Street in Providence. If you missed any of this show or any other episode of Executive Suite, you can catch it on WPRI.com. We'll see you next week.